The F1 Pod on Off the Ball with Chicago Town Pizza.
Formula One?
Yeah, we go to town on it.
Okay, you're very welcome back to the F1 Pod on Off the Ball. It's episode 11. We are tipping through them weekly between now and the end of the season, after race weekends, of course, live on Wednesdays after race weekends. As I said, in the F1 Pod podcast feed and the Off the Ball Daily podcast feed as well, wherever you get your podcasts. The F1 Pod on Off the Ball, brought to you by Chicago Town Pizza, real takeout taste for less with Chicago Town. Keep your questions coming in as per usual every week. Delighted to welcome back Bernie Collins, the F1 pundit and former head of race strategy for the Aston Martin Formula One team, and a very special guest for this week's episode. We have Conor Moore, aka Conor Sketches. Bernie and Conor, how are things?
Good, thank you.
I'm very well. I was disappointed you didn't introduce me as a Formula One expert, but whatever.
Of course, I should have.
I watched every episode of Drive to Survive.
Same as myself. We were all basically couch experts. Is that how your interest kind of was reignited in Formula One, or were you a fan before then, or what's your F1 fan story?
When I was a kid, I was a fan, but when I was a kid, like you had Eddie Jordan, Irvine, and then, but like a lot of people, like it just dissipated then, or something, like in the early noughties, like the interest around it wasn't really on the TV anymore or something. It just went away, and it was during COVID. Then I was in the War Memorial Gardens drinking some cans because you couldn't drink inside pubs or whatever. And all my wife's friends were talking about the Grand Prix, and I was a bit like, this piqued my interest. I was like, why? Who talks about the Grand Prix? Like, what are you all talking about the Grand Prix for? And they were like, oh, you're not watching Drive to Survive, no? And I was like, what's Drive to Survive? And that evening I watched 3 episodes, and the rest is history. I became an addict.
Properly back into it. Like, Bernie, you'd be more than familiar with Conor and his work, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm actually very nervous about this episode of our podcast.
I was just watching some stuff on it this morning there, and I was like, oh, I could easily do that, yeah.
Do you think you'd have a Bernie in your locker, Conor?
I think, yeah, if you gave me, I definitely, like, a lot of people are like, oh, can you do this person and do that person and do it now or whatever, and I'm like, it takes me quite a while, like, to get somebody, but like it could take me 3 or 4 weeks or something. I'd have to listen to someone every day to get him, but it's like at the minute, like Alonso is taking me forever to kind of nail him down. Charles Leclerc is another one that I struggle with, but yeah, but I definitely think there's definitely plenty to go on there with Bernie. You'll see me on Sky Sports doing it one day.
You'll be more conscious.
I can't wait. Please be nice.
Oh, I'm always nice. That's what who was it that said that to me recently? Nico Rosberg, yeah, when I met him at Monaco. It was like, so the guys were like, you know the guy, I was standing right beside him, you know the guy that does the voice? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, and he says, yeah, you know him, yeah? And like, he was staring right at me. He was like, yeah. And then the guys were like, that's him. And he's like, oh my God, yeah, that's you. And then I said to him, yeah, I'm working on you at the minute. And he's like, so what's the angle? He was pretty much like, what are you gonna do? Be nice. I was like, all right.
Yeah, I think it's pressure, like, because once you realize you're going to meet these people in person, then you're like, well, maybe you have to be conscious of what I'm saying. But then I guess that's not the point.
Yeah, pretty much. You kind of have to be. Sorry, someone's after coming into my house there.
Terrifying. Hope you're all right.
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm building a house here at the minute, so there's a few construction workers out there.
Lovely. Hard to beat it. I think it's a perfect week to have you on, Conor, given what a weekend it was for Carlos Sainz. I mean, must be absolutely buzzing.
Oh, incredible. Carlos, very, very happy after that, you know.
It was brilliant. I'm delighted for him. Like, and he did great. Like, he's, since the break, he's come back and he's been amazing. Like, he's obviously been he's finished ahead of Charles the last 3 races. And yeah, I just think like he's really shown like a lot of great form in that car. And I think like, thankfully, he's made it somewhat interesting and it wasn't a clean sweep for Red Bull. And how he drove at the weekend was incredible too, like, you know, and how, like, my favorite part of the race was, okay, Lando is, within a second of you, he's in DRS. And
I know, I did it on purpose.
He's one of those characters in the sport that we all kind of love, and it's hard to dislike Carlos Sainz and Bernie, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And like Conor said there, what an intelligent race from start to finish. He really controlled it all weekend, actually. He looked in control of that car, really put together. all of the lap times are coming smooth. He wasn't like arguing with it, which you've seen the Ferrari guys do in recent races. They've just been really struggling from start to finish. It just looked really smooth. And the intelligence through that race, you know, the first stint backing everyone up, then opening the gap for the safety car. The last stint, like Conor said, trying to get the DRS of Norris. I actually said in commentary to one of the guys, I think he's trying to hold on to the DRS. I'm like, no, that would be a ridiculous thing to do. And then, like, sure enough. So it was just one of those, he just seemed to have it. He just seemed under control the whole weekend. And you know, was close at the end, very close to not getting away with it, but Matt just managed to get it home.
Is it one of the crazier race weekends, Bernie? I was following your exploits on Instagram. It seemed like it was nightclubs, searches for monkeys, cable cars. You were busy.
I think you say exploits on Instagram makes it worse than it sounds.
Sorry, of course,
but,
yeah.
Like for us, Jesus, I can't deal with the heat. It's so hot and humid, and it's real. Like you really get a feel for how difficult it is for the guys in the car. Like all of us are struggling in the pit lane and paddock. It is a bit weird. It's one of those ones where, you know, you travel 14 hours, 15 hours on a flight, but you're trying to keep on the UK time zones. You're getting up at 12 or 1, you're going in for 2 p.m, you're having breakfast at 1 p.m. or something. So it's a real odd time zone. And then you're trying to, you know, why it seems such exploits, like you say, is you're trying to stay awake to sort of 4 or 5 in order to be on the right thing for getting up at midday, early afternoon again. So it feels somehow when you're working it like you've got more hours than you do in a normal race weekend, because you're trying to get back from what can do this staying up. And it's just odd in that way. And then because I'm going on to Japan, I'm in Japan now. I had a few days off post Singapore in Singapore to try and get myself onto an actual time zone.
Yeah, it's a tough one on the body, I'd imagine, to kind of know where you are, what time you're supposed to be going to sleep, and all the rest. Have your F1 Grand Prix, I guess, exploits again, Conor, been busy this year? Have you managed to get over to any race weekends?
Oh, just the one, Monaco. Whatever.
Oh, must be tough.
No, I'm hoping to get to Vegas, and I was did Monaco. They're incredible weekends, to be fair, like how they put them together and stuff. Like obviously my first one was in Austin last year, and I was like nearly emotional leaving it. I was like, that was incredible. Like literally, if you go to one, you are hooked. And I was delighted. Like even when you watch it on TV, and to be fair, on TV, it's amazing to watch, and they make it so interesting. But when you're at the track, sometimes when you see an overtake on TV, before I was at a Grand Prix, I was very much like, you know, Crofty's like, and he's gonna take it, and you're a bit like, was it that crazy? Like, you're whatever you're watching on TV, and then when you're there and you see like an overtake at that speed, you're like, well, it is crazy, and how the crowd like just erupt and stuff. But for me, like I am absolutely, I love it. Like I really love it. And like a lot of people, like I get asked to do different games, and even in America, I've been asked to do different sports, like, and I just never went into them. Because if I'm not interested in the sport, like I can't do what I would like to think is a good job of the sport. So I have to, because like Sundays for me, for instance, like it's like there's soccer on, there's F1 on, there's golf on. So like I have to like them to be able to spend my entire Sunday sitting on the couch. God help me, sitting on the couch watching sports. But going to it like just done me the world of good. Like, and even like what Bernie was saying there about like, I find every race interesting as well. And I can see like sometimes the likes of yourself or even Martin and stuff, when you're on TV, you are explaining it to people, because you do realize there are people out there that are from the Drive to Survive generation. Like there's a huge amount of them that don't understand exactly. Like when I heard that Lando was in the DRS zone, I was like, oh no. Because I had that idea for the video in my head, like from about 20 laps out. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be deadly. And I'll just, instead of the Spanish anthem, I'm just going to have Smooth Operator. So I was standing up on the TV, like roaring it on for Carlos. But then I was like, oh my God, he's in the DRS. And then after you were like, you know, explaining it and stuff, I'm like, oh my God, that is genius. So he had him in it, but just in it back far enough that he couldn't punish him. And yeah, I absolutely love it. And going to Monaco and going to Austin, like, for me, just as a sports fan, like, to go to these is just incredible. Like, so yeah, love it.
Was that must have been a bit of a pinch me moment, even Austin last year, where, you know, you're there, I guess, as guests of the organizers, and, you know, you've gone from, I guess, doing, you know, videos on your mobile phone to all of a sudden being at a Grand Prix and everyone probably recognizes you at it because you've put up all these videos. It must have been a strange one.
Oh, Monaco was like, it was wow. We came out of the hotel, and I think I was staying in the same hotel as some of the drivers. Like, so when I came out, like, these people ran at me. My wife was like this doesn't happen ever. And all these kids ran over, and like, it took me every morning about 10 minutes to get out of the hotel, where you took pictures and you were there and you were like signing tops and hats. And then even when I was driving to the racetrack, as I was coming in the car, people were banging on the window, like pointing at me and stuff. And I was like, this is the craziest thing ever. And then when I was going to Monaco, we were over in Nice, and I said to my wife, I was like, let's go over Saturday, because like it'll be a bit mad or whatever, you know what I mean? Same crack as Austin. Went to Monaco. I'd say about 4 people come up to me all weekend. I was like, it was a completely different vibe in Monaco. You could see, like, in Monaco, to be fair, I don't know if there's, like, when I was at Austin, it was all about the race. Everything was about the race. And when I was at Monaco, I felt everything was like, oh, there's Neymar. Oh, there's Tom Holland. It was a bit more like you were at the Oscars or something. It wasn't the race was kind of something that was happening in the background or something.
Yeah. That takes time, I'd say, even Bernie, like, to get used to when you see because it's one of those sports that has become so mainstream. Like, there's no other sport where you see so many celebrities on the pit lane and the grid before a race starts. It's a bit crazy.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm glad. I was going to ask Conor a question. I was going to ask if he brought his wife along, given that she got him into it, but I'm glad to hear that he did. So that's positive.
Twice.
But I thought you were going to say 2 wives there, Conor. So good that you have.
When we got to the 3rd episode of Drive to Survive, I think it went to Monaco, Monte Carlo, yeah, and she just looked at me and she went, if you go there, I'm going there. She's from Donegal. Like, if you go there, I'm going there with you. So she's actually been with me twice to the 2 Grand Prix I've been at. And the next one I'm going to as well, she's booked in. The great thing for her is that she's finally interested in a sport that I do. The rest of them, she couldn't care.
Yeah. The thing for me is, like, you get to the grid and you see people on the grid and you get that someone's importance coming, or in the paddock, whatever, because that person will be coming with a bit of an entourage. And like Conor says, people running up trying to get photos or signatures, whatever. 9 times out of 10, I don't know who that person is. And then that person walks past me and I have to say to someone, who is that? And then it's like someone that I know I should recognize. But I think because you're so into, unlike Conor, so into the one sport, and I don't really sit at home and watch the other sports, or don't watch the football or whatever it might be, unless it's like a musician that I know, then it's just lost on me, or someone will tell me and then I'll have forgotten by the next week. So I'm just sort of like head in the clouds, bumping into people, not really realizing what's going on.
You sound like Martin Brundle.
Yeah,
like that.
Basically same thing. It's funny because, like, I'd say you were licking your lips watching Drive to Survive, Conor, because you see someone like Gunther Steiner, Toto Wolff, Carlos Sainz, Daniel Ricciardo. Like, they're all, I don't know, maybe it's the same in other sports, but they're all so expressive, and like, I'd imagine people that you're just dying to impersonate.
Oh, big time. Like, actually, for next year, I actually want to try and do a video at the start of the year where I attempt to do all 20 drivers, like, just to give, it'll take ages. Like, I kind of need to start on it, like, maybe in November or something. But that was the big thing for me as well. When I was watching that, I was like, oh my God, this is easy, because in other sports, they don't really say much. They don't give away much. While in Formula One, you are obligated to get out of the car. You're still sweating and everything. You wipe yourself down and, you're pretty much over into the media pen, fairly soon after that. So whatever emotion, like, look at George at the weekend, like, he's crying. Like, he's literally, you can see, or he's after wiping away the tears, like, he's so upset. While if you got George an hour later, if he went to a dressing room and he came out, like, he's more composed. So that for me is just huge with Formula One. And then Drive to Survive gave me, like, the characters, like, as in, you're watching Daniel Ricciardo, like, he's just so big. Like, he's probably, he's up there with the biggest drivers in the world. And a lot of it is to do with his personality and how likable he is. And, the big smile like that, like, it was one of the first. I was kind of like, I just love it. I call so small at night, He was one of the first. And Carlos was easy. Like, I remember that's the line. I looked at my wife. I was like, we're sitting on the couch. I was like, my name is Carlos Sainz. I'm a driver with Ferrari. And she was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. So I was like, I knew I had him. But yeah, it just gave me an insight into who they are as people, which makes it easier for you to write funny stuff around them, because it's like in golf, I find it pretty hard. The live stuff this year was good. And obviously Netflix tried to do the same thing with the golf. But unfortunately, like golf is harder to kind of follow. It goes on for so much longer. And they spend 5 hours playing golf. And of that 5 hours, maybe over 4 of those hours are walking. You know, so like if you like one episode was on a guy called Joel Damon, but we haven't really seen him playing golf at all this year because he's not been in contention. But like in Drive to Survive, everybody is in contention for something. Whether, you know, it's the Haas lads trying to score points. It's like, I don't know, was it like Jeddah or one of those races? I remember after it, like Williams scored a point and it was like they celebrated like they won the Grand Prix. And that's what I think is amazing about Formula One. Like some people come on and they go, what a boring race. Verstappen won it again. It's like, well, depending on what you're watching, yeah, it's boring. If you're just watching to see who won the race, it's boring. But if you're looking at like a battle between Alonso and Lewis and like that, like it does matter if Mercedes beat Ferrari or Ferrari beat Mercedes and stuff like that. Like there's so much more to play for and so much more going on, I think, in Formula One, which makes it for me, like at the minute, it's the one I enjoy most.
It's posture as well. It's like even when from some of your videos, like you had the Lewis Hamilton jewelry and like even the Kimi Räikkönen one where he's just sitting down in the seat and the posture is so I guess the posture of a man who doesn't want to talk and hates interviews, really.
Yeah, you know, it's incredible to be here, you know, on this podcast, whatever your name is. I actually met a guy at the weekend. I was doing a golf gig and he's mates with a few of the drivers. He's like, I met Kimmy. Yeah. He thinks you're a see you next Tuesday.
Does he really?
Well, I don't know. I doubt he thinks of it. Like maybe he said it for a joke. So I don't know. But yeah, there's like, it's weird. I do transplant some characters like from one sport to another. And I'm like, oh, he's like that. He's like that. And then Francesco Molinari, the golfer that I was doing for so long, who just has that like bland expression on his face, who just doesn't really, like he has no expressions and he just kind of says stuff like, yeah, really excited to be out there. I was like, well, there's Kimmy. Like, so sometimes a bit of the work I've done over the last couple of years, like just, you know, helps in sort of formulating characters. I actually am literally at the minute doing like a little radio green screen background thing where I'm going to have Radio Kimmy. And it's going to be like his own podcast where people are just calling in. And I thought it'd be deadly if I'm maybe thinking about putting Will Buxton with him. So you've one of them like that is just like, you know, nearly climaxing talking about F1 and the other fella's like, yeah, this was a shit, wasn't it? That's the greatest I've ever seen, isn't it?
That's going to be very good, Conor.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. I've been waiting on that idea. I'm like digitally building the set for it.
That's amazing because it's one of those sports, and that's why we're half joking at the start about you impersonating Bernie at some stage. But it's one of those sports where the pundits, because the TV coverage is so big, the punditry and the analysis is so important. Like the likes of Will Buxton and the other guys and on TV, you know, they're such important figures in the sport as well.
Massively. This is one thing I have a bee in my bonnet this year, like, and I think it's just because I'm been over at F1 and stuff, and I'm like, the GEA needs a little bit more media. It needs more PR. It needs some like characters talking about it, like, because this is the first year I kind of felt outside some good games. I was like, there was no real storylines. And I like to do like, I way prefer of all the games that I do. I love my GA stuff and I want to do plenty of it and stuff. And I found this year, like, it was very hard to come up with ideas. Now, definitely my interest, obviously being involved in different games, you can't give it the attention that you've given it before. But like, I just think F1 like just has like the coverage of it is so good. On a Sunday, I just sit there and I will watch before it on Sky. I will watch the race. You know, you press that. I do some stuff for Sky, so it sounds like I'm plugging Sky Iron at the time. But it's just so good, and it's as a product, they make it even when the winner just walks away with it. And the championship has been won months ago, not even weeks ago. It's still interesting, and I'll still watch every race, and I'll still like get excited about like all the way up to Abu Dhabi, like. And I just think it does such a good job between everybody, between F1, between Sky. They do such a great job of giving you the most entertaining product they can give you.
That must be something, Bernie, that you guys have very much in the back of your heads, like across those, say, last 10 races, like before the weekend just gone, where, you know, Max Verstappen is winning. It's a bit of a procession every week. But yet you guys still have to make it interesting and point out the battles of the midfield or or the race for the podium, or even a nice little overtaking battle further down the grid, you have to make it interesting somehow.
Yeah, well, I think, to be honest, I think that was easier in my position than some of the other guys, because yeah, some people out there are only interested in who's winning, but I've spent so long in that midfield battle, and there's so many good midfield battles that really actually interests me to see who's doing where, and the fact that you can't predict who's going to be P2, 3, 4, maybe all the way, like quite far down. You don't know where the order is going to end up. So I actually find that bit reasonably okay. There's always been loads of stories to talk about, be it one driver doing well or badly or whatever it might be. So there's always, because you've got these 20 individual teams, players all trying to have their own little individual battles, there's always something to pick up on, or so there's always more almost to report on than what you can report on in the time you have available. So it's just about picking the stuff that's most interesting. And the bit for me that's a challenge and what we're trying to work on going forward is, how do you sell that midfield story well during the race? How do you keep everyone well enough informed of what's going on, all these little other battles that are happening? Because I think we have had a lot of TV in the past, particularly, where it's just who won the race, and that's the only driver you're watching for the entire 50, 60 laps, whatever it might be. So I think we are getting better at that. And yeah, like there's loads of interesting stuff. And I think the thing we have now is that so many people are so keen to learn, and be that the new fans learning something, right at the beginning, or the people who've been watching it for 30, 40, whatever number of years that are want to get more in depth to the tire models, whatever it might be. So yeah, there's loads out there. It's just how we package it and get it out there.
I probably have spoken to you about this before, Bernie, but like that I guess progression from race strategy and the engineering side of things into the media, was that something you always had in the back of your head, or was that something that kind of came about coincidentally?
No, it just sort of happened. So I stopped racing because I didn't want to do 23 races. I actually really loved what I did. I loved doing strategy. I loved the pressure of being on the pit wall. I loved the influence that I had in the race, I suppose, being honest. You had a big effect on what happened at the end of the Sunday, albeit just one team. But you were so involved in it all, and I got on really well with the people I travelled with. I enjoyed the travelling. But at some point you have to realise you're not 20, and actually you probably shouldn't do, 25 or whatever it is weeks away from home. You should maybe be a bit more settled than that. So I elected to just give it up, and it was really good actually. And then the media stuff just happened off the back of that a bit randomly, without loads of training, which is a bit worrying. But there you go. But it brings a different element, and it's about trying to improve the overall coverage that we get, and sort of seeing how it goes. Like, it might work out, it might not work out. Let's see. This year's been okay, I think. But let's see where it goes next year.
Absolutely, onwards and upwards. It's flying for now, for sure. I'm going to take a very, very short ad break, guys. We'll be back in just a second on the F1 pod and Off the Ball. Bernie Collins and Conor Moore with us, and we'll be back in just a second. All right, you're very welcome back to episode 11 of the F1 Pod and Off the Ball weekly on Wednesdays after race weekends between now and the end of the season, live in the F1 Pod podcast feed, the Off the Ball Daily podcast feed as well, wherever you get your podcasts. Myself, Shane Hannon, we've got Bernie Collins, the former head of race strategy for the Aston Martin Formula 1 team, and we have Conor Moore as well with us, aka Conor Sketches, Formula 1 expert. Conor Moore.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm telling you that again.
Yeah, I almost got it. I almost forgot it again. Jesus. Got there eventually. Conor, you were talking about Monaco there earlier, and like it's amazing how many people I talk to who even have a passing interest in Formula 1, and Monaco is always on their sporting bucket list, alongside things like the Super Bowl and whatever else. Does it live up to expectations, or is it all just so Hollywood that it's hard to enjoy it?
It all depends. I'm probably not a good person to ask that, because I'm probably not there as a spectator. Like, and when I'm there, then I'm always like I actually was brought over by Red Bull, and they were like, you don't have to do anything. So I did a gig with them in December, and they were like, you need to go to a race. Because when I was in Austin, like, my schedule was like, boom, you're here with Ferrari, you're here with Carlos, now you're with Mercedes the following day or whatever. Like, and it was just like that. And at the end of it, I was like, wasn't that amazing? But during it, like, I was stressed out to the max, and I lost my voice on the Saturday where I went to a party. And like I would have had a few drinks, but not enough to lose. But there was very loud music. And I remember on the Sunday I was supposed to do the grid walk with Martin Brundle, and I couldn't do it then because my voice was literally gone. And it was just a crazy week. But I remember leaving going, wasn't that amazing? Like that was just incredible. But in the middle of it, I would have been a bit stressed. And then in Monaco, it was like, just go and relax. And then I couldn't go and relax because I felt bad because Red Bull were after giving me these amazing like tickets and stuff. And I was like, I better do something. So I was trying to, even when I went back to the hotel, I was like, I got to do something. So like I contacted the guy Red Bull. I was like, well, I can do a little bit of Christian if you want. And they were like, oh yeah, we'd love that. So like, yeah, but I would say that I actually had more of a grow for Austin, because it was, for me, like going there, I am very interested in the race and I'm very interested in all that kind of stuff. And yeah, in Monaco, it was a bit more of like this incredible show. Now, it was still incredibly cool. Like, the whole weekend was amazing. Like we watched qualifying on a boat, and then we got a boat back after the race. Me and my wife and Jensen Button like got a boat back over to the Red Bull, and like it was just like surreal stuff. Like it really was amazing. But yeah, I'm sure it has to be a bucket list thing for anybody just to go there, and even like the city, like to get over there to Monte Carlo, like it really is just something else.
I think we have spoken about this in studio before, and in the Off the Ball studio one, it was an episode we did of You Had to Be There, and you're talking about like, it must be so strange when you're sitting on stage beside someone like, say, Roy Keane, having impersonated him and doing it in front of him then, or Jose Mourinho or Tiger Woods. Like, when it goes from you deciding to pick a person to impersonate, mastering that, and then I guess recording the video and releasing it to the public, to then get the chance to sit beside them or stand beside them and do the impression must be, I don't know if amazing or nerve-wracking is the right word.
It's a lot more amazing than nerve-wracking, because anytime you do it, you realize, if it's set up, that the person knows you're coming on, and if they know you're coming on, they obviously like you. So like, or not like you, but like your impression. Like, let's say they obviously don't know you, but like, so I had heard that Keane enjoyed watching the videos or whatever, like, and I'd heard that Mourinho like would be on a Monday when he was at Tottenham, would be like, did you see this video? Did you see it? Very good. Again. So and even the Tiger thing was the same thing. I remember when I got asked to do that, it was like, does Tiger know about this? They were like, no, we're going to ask him later on today. So I remember kind of thinking, it probably won't happen. And then that evening they were like, Tiger stoked. And I was like, all right. So it did make it an awful lot easier for me meeting the guys. And it's like when you meet Roy Keane, like there's a different nerves as well. Like, because I grew up like watching Roy Keane, and like, as I was explaining to somebody, Roy Keane like is nearly above your top celebrities in Ireland. He's in between top celebrities and other sports stars and revolutionary figures or something. He's just there underneath them or something. He's a cult hero. And meeting him was very nerve-wracking. The F1 lads, that can be a little bit, because a lot of when I met all them, it was very random. Even when I met Daniel that time, and we got that little great piece of footage, like he's like, yes, I should have bet me again and see what happens. It's brilliant. And it's like, at the minute, would you believe, everybody kept saying to me after the Roy Keane thing, they're like, what are you going to do like now? Like, there's no one really you can do that you're going to get bigger than Roy Keane. Being Irish and everything else, they were like, and I was like, you're absolutely spot on. I don't think there is anybody. And then I was like, unless it was like Ronaldo or Messi, but I've done Ronaldo quite a bit. So when I was over in Monaco, I was walking by certain like, there was like little sort of pop-up stages, and they were in like somewhere in Italian. There was one I walked by, they were in French, and I was like, it'd be worth learning a European language. And I thought to myself, like, imagine I learned Spanish and then I did Messi, because Messi doesn't talk English, and I did my impersonation of Messi. Yo hablo español, talking Spanish. I was like, so at the minute I'm learning Spanish.
Are you right?
And then I was like, imagine if I was at the Spanish Grand Prix or the Mexican Grand Prix or something, and I was doing Carlos Sainz and I was doing it on TV, like in Spanish, like. So yeah, I've said it. So I'm after putting it out there into the world. Maybe one day I'll like get to do Messi before he retires or something, if I learn it quick enough.
I mean, that's
So Conor, I want to see you do the FIA press conference as the interviewer. I want to see you do the interview questions for the FIA press conference to whichever drivers are in the press
Do
conference.
you know, actually, F1, when I was with them in Austin last year, they actually had that kind of idea and I bottled it. I was like, oh, I don't know. I was like, because there's a lot of serious journalists in there. And then you come in, and at the time you see, if you don't know who you are, they'd be like, who's this lad? I'd be more comfortable doing it now because they'd probably know, you know what I mean? Going in there. But yeah, I could definitely, that's actually a sketch. I could just.
Oh, that's brilliant.
You can have that for free.
Cheers. I'll go easy on you then when I'm doing the old impersonation.
Well, yeah, if you have a Donegal girlfriend or is a wife, Conor, at this stage?
Yeah.
Well, then if you're like Bernie, you're from Fermanagh, so it's not a million miles away, I guess.
Yeah, it's not, but you probably hurt a lot of people there now saying that.
No, of course there are definitely.
I could see there was a little bit of disdain there.
There are definite accent differences. There's like it's very subtle, possibly.
Oh, it's not that far away. I don't know. It's fine.
It is, like, you know, to me, before I started doing impersonations, it's like when you go to America, you think everybody sounds the same, but then when you live over there a while, you're like, oh no, you start noticing differences. And I would notice like a Donegal accent and a Derry accent and a Fermanagh accent, and then obviously Cavan then is like, it's halfway between everything. How they going there, you know yourself. But
I'm a bit odd because I've spent what, 13 years in England now, so I've slowed down a lot from what I would have spoke when I'm at home. And then to add to the mix, my other half's Scottish, so I'll occasionally say like a Scottish word in the middle of everything,
just to confuse it all.
There's a good combination going on.
Yeah, I find the same thing happened to me in America. It was the best thing ever. About 10 years ago, I went over to J1, and I was working behind a bar, and this guy was like, "Hey, sir," and I was like, "What can I get you?" He's like, "What?" I was like, "What can I get you?" He's like, "So what the did you just say?" I was like, "What can I get you?" He's like, "Slow it down, bro. Slow it down." And then after a few weeks in the bar, I realized I was talking too fast. So that definitely helped my speech.
It's a quick lesson to learn. Sometimes it is just a matter of saying the same thing but slowly. Like for you, Bernie, would you have a favorite of Conor's that he does in F1 terms or otherwise?
Oh, that's a big question. I actually really like. I think the two. I quite like the Ricciardo ones, and just because I love. So one of the roles I did in my job was I listened to all the drivers after the race. I'd listen to all their radio comms, and the one I always loved listening to was Kimi, because it was by far the best radio comms you could get. So just because you've got, and you know, it was one of, and plus you would listen to everyone others. When you took all the gaps out, everyone else's was like 15, 20 minutes. Kimi's was like 5 minutes. So it was the easiest one to listen to as well, because there was literally no conversation there. So yeah, I quite like those two, I would say.
That's amazing.
I started doing like little cartoons where I was doing like the rate, because I thought like there's so much content there in the radio in the cockpit when they're talking back. So I was doing like, and I actually just in my head there, I'm like, I should just do like some archive ones of Kimi and just like draw it up. I did it like an animation, so that because I can't put myself in a car, obviously.
Yeah.
Because I bought enough of the gear, and I was like, I'm not buying the helmets then and trying to green screen that crack. I actually one day had helmets. I was like, I'll just buy the helmets, and then I was like, so 3,000 for a helmet. I was like,
one of the teams will sort you out. Aston Martin there. Bernie has a few contacts. We can sort out a helmet maybe. I said that now.
I've not got a helmet yet, so I'm not going to sort one out for Conor.
That's a team now. That's a team for me that like I have huge interest in. You know, just everything. It's like Succession or something. And who's the main guy there or whatever, like, you know, with Lawrence. That's like, I find that really interesting. I remember like when he walked, I was sitting on the Energize station and Lawrence walked from, you know, as they walk out onto the, what do you call it? Like the jetty, like to get onto the boat or whatever.
Yeah.
So he walks across, like, and in my head, I just had the Succession music, and he was really pissed off. Like Alonso nearly could have won that one or whatever, and like it just wasn't a good day for him, like, because they were close, and obviously Lance didn't go great. So he's walking across, and I just had the Succession music in my head, and I was like, I got to start doing some Succession stuff there. Like, I was
yeah,
very slowly walking, very slowly.
Few people asked him for a photograph. He was like,
oh yeah, Logan Roy or Lawrence Stroll as Logan Roy. That works 100%. I can see it straight away. Like it's one of those, like, Bernie, when you're watching, say at the weekend there, for example, like Lance Stroll can't even start. Big shunt in qualifying, and then Fernando, the car's undrivable in the race. Like, and a number of things go wrong. Like, are you looking at weekends like that, at nights like that for Aston Martin, and just thinking, Jesus, what is happening there?
Oh yeah, I think like there's been a few races recently, like that one. One of the things I thought before the race, this is going to sound very odd, but actually having one car in the race is at times more difficult than having two cars, because you've got twice as many people all with their input to one car. So it actually becomes really difficult on the pit wall because there's too many cooks in the kitchen. Everyone's giving an opinion. So I was just thinking to myself, oh, I'm so glad I'm not in that position. But then, the Monaco wet race, again, those decisions are really difficult. And it's just, you don't want the kickback afterwards. But yeah, just the weekend seemed really, I didn't realise properly until I started to go through it on Monday or Tuesday how bad, I knew where Alonso had finished, but sort of how bad it all panned out. Rumour has it something maybe broke in the car early on in the race, some suspension bit that was part of what made it undrivable. But God, the weekend just went from bad to worse. Hopefully it sounds like Lance is going to be good to get in the car this week, but the car seems to have not developed or not made the progress. But from where they were, if you look at their trajectory from clearly P2 when we rolled out race 1 to where they are now, and McLaren's trajectory from where they rolled out to where they are now, they're directly opposite. And the getting better and better through the season is easier for a team to deal with. Whereas the other one is people get used to the podiums, then you get disappointed, then you have a race where you don't even score points. It's pretty hard to take as a team pit wall, the guys in the garage. So let's hope they can turn it around this weekend. But yeah, it was a difficult weekend for them.
And you mentioned already, Conor, George Russell and the definite tears. There were tears 100% there in the post race interview. And that last lap. I mean, look, it's probably a bittersweet. Well, not really bittersweet. They all have egos. Lewis Hamilton will be delighted with his podium, no matter what way he got it. But when you see something like that happen to George Russell, it must be tough to take.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult now to talk about right now, I guess.
Per George.
Yeah, I felt bad for him. I love George. I thought that's why I didn't take the mick out of him after the race. Yeah, it was unfortunate. And I suppose he might be feeling a bit under pressure, because Lewis is kind of that gap is stretching between him and Lewis. And obviously you've something similar happening at Aston Martin, obviously, where Lance is under pressure, and obviously for other reasons as well, where the disparity between him and Fernando is huge, or so. I think Fernando's got something like 80% of the points this year. Lewis is up around 60% of the Mercedes points. And it was just, I think with the way the Red Bull car is, you probably aren't going to get too many opportunities like that between now and the end of the year. And that was a massive chance for George, to get a win. And he obviously got a great win last year. So I think, yeah, he came in, you could see it. He's very like that though. Sometimes even when he wins, I think, is he about to start crying? He wears it all. That's what as I was going back to that earlier, that's what's great about the microphone is just, as soon as he jumps out of the car, he's got to go talk, you know what I mean? And he, yeah, I hope he turns it around. I hope he's not feeling under too much pressure. He may be just Lewis is performing better, definitely, in the last couple of weeks. But yeah, it's between them and Ferrari now for second place. Yeah. I don't think Aston Martin now, it's just too much for them. They kind of, in a sense, are operating on one leg. I think obviously it's usually one car that's scoring all the points, and it's just McLaren might be looking at them now thinking maybe we could, if we have a big finish and Oscar can start scoring, we could actually jump Aston Martin, which would be a huge disappointment given the strides Aston Martin have made this year. Like you just said earlier on, Bernie, it's McLaren started off and they were a bit of a joke shop at the start. They obviously got something wrong, but they knew what they got wrong and they got fixing it. And it looks like Aston Martin got a lot of stuff right. And I don't know whether they've got something wrong now or they've just, I suppose if you're standing still in F1, you're going to be left behind or something. And I don't know what's going on.
I think, like you say, Conor, McLaren sounds so confident. So they were saying going into last weekend that the upgrade was bigger than the upgrade they brought earlier on in the year. I don't think we fully see any upgrade when we go to Singapore because the circuit it is. Oscar's going to have it this week. So you're going to have two cars running the upgraded, a very aero performance track of Suzuka. So it's going to be real interesting to see. And I think the few people I spoke to in the pit lane, 100% their ambition is to turn it around and see, overhaul Aston, keep going. They're not aiming at stopping there. So it'll be real interesting end of the year, I think, for them.
The Ferrari thing as well, Bernie, is just fascinating because a number of times on the podcast this year we've spoken about Ferrari from a strategy perspective as well, and they left a little bit to be desired, certainly last season as well. Even, I mean, it feels like they're back. Charles Leclerc won't be as happy as Sainz, obviously, with the weekend just gone, but that constructors race for second, as Conor mentioned, is only down to 24 points.
Yeah, I think, particularly with Charles, they did an amazing weekend. They had the perfect strategy. Charles controlled a lot of it. There was a lot of confidence coming in the calls from pit wall as well. It was very clear cut. Being totally critical, I think the only thing they could have done better is I think there was an opportunity for Leclerc to get his car out in front of in a better gap in that pit lane. So they held him for Hamilton coming in, but Hamilton was slowing down for the stack. So I think when I talked, there was a gap in Formula 1 terms, was 3 second gap there. So depending on the strength of the guy at the front releasing the car, you release into that gap. Now it's obviously different pit lane at 60 kph. There's loads of reasons, a split second decisions, but McLaren were confident and released in the gap, and they got their car out ahead of Leclerc. And I think there was a bit of an opportunity. So there could have been a 1-2 on the cards there that's me being super critical, right? But the weekend, aside from that, from the decisions that came from the pit wall, pretty flawless. They're hopeful, at least in the press, that they can keep it up into Japan. Let's see. But it's they're looking a lot more comfortable in the car than what they were, and a lot more of a unit. We've often seen Ferrari looking real split. Drivers aren't agreeing with the pit wall aren't agreeing with management, whatever. They look real together at the minute.
Yeah, I was actually writing them off last week, or in Italy. Like what I said, the last 2 laps or so, I was like, "What are they doing?" I was like, "This is in Italy. Don't mess this up." And Charles was locking up, and I was thinking, like, Fred is like, he's like a parent over 2 sons that are of the same age, or there's a year between them, and Charles is the older fella, and he won't let the younger fella do anything. It's like, no, you know what I mean, or something. And I was like, I just thought after last week, I was actually fearful for them in the sense that, like, they are getting it together, but they kind of, both guys are looking at it like, no, I'm number one. And then they don't really say who's number one. It's like they've got 2 number 1 drivers or something. And that, like, I thought, like, what a risky, it just looked like they were fighting it out in the last lap. And I was like, Jesus, like, they don't really have much control. But then this week, what a huge difference, like, when they work as a team. And I'm sure Charles, like, didn't really want to do, like, he didn't want to be the supporting act, like, but he did very well, and he complimented Carlos so well. And this week is where you seen him, like, everybody from the top down work as a team, and it was, yeah, like you said, it was like pretty flawless.
But I wonder if that's going to really add the pressure in quali now, because Leclerc was forced to be the number 2 driver, if you want to call it that, because of the qualifying. So actually, maybe they have a new procedure that whoever comes out of turn 1 first, that's the lead driver that weekend. So how long does that, friendliness last? Let's see.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and it's so funny when we're talking about such young drivers here as well. And that was even something I remember from one of your skits that just came to me as well, Conor. Like, even the Lando Norris dummy, and you sometimes forget how young these lads are. Like George Russell, Lando Norris, Liam Lawson picks up his first points on his 3rd Grand Prix at the weekend for AlphaTauri as well. Amazing achievement for him. Sometimes you forget. I guess if you're good enough, you're old enough in any sport.
Yeah, it's weird. Even when I went over to Austin that time, like, somebody was like, we're going to get you to dress up as the driver and then just surprise him as he comes out. And in my head, I was like, I'm 34 years of age. I was like, this fella's like 22 or something. I was like, and I'm going to be standing there like I'm some sort of child. Like, it's like, I'm not doing that. But it is. They're obviously, though, they're mature beyond their years, in fairness to them, like, to be able to do what they do. But yeah, definitely, if you're old enough. Yeah, Liam Lawson, I was kind of thinking, like, what's the dynamic there if he performs well? Like, I don't know what the crack is with Daniel. Like, is there any word on when he's back or able to drive?
I read something that said potentially Qatar.
Okay.
So missing, but
Time, isn't it?
missing this one and the next one. Or missing this one back for the next one, but I don't think it's clear. You know, he locked in Pian in the pit lane. So
Yeah, like, and Lawson, like, that was like an amazing drive at the weekend for him, like, you know, and like, obviously his qualifying was good, his race was good. Be interesting to see if he does well now again next week. Like, he puts himself in contention, you know, for, I don't know, is there many seats available next year? Is there at the moment?
Well, Sebastian Vettel's talking about wanting to come back as well, isn't he, as well?
Is he? Just better get working on him.
Yeah. Well, I suppose they all want the seats. They can't seem to leave for too long, Bernie.
no, exactly. I think like after tour, there's a lot of talk that Tsunoda will be confirmed this weekend because we're in Japan, the Japanese driver. So that'll be interesting. But there's seats available there. There's a seat available at Williams. So yeah, it's a bit up there. But I think, like Conor says, Lawson's done enough. And for someone being so young and being given this opportunity, it's like an interview you really want to pass. It's going to affect your whole life whether you pass this interview or not. And when you meet him in the pit lane, we spoke to him on the grid in Zandvoort, his first race, and he was cool as anything. Like, I couldn't believe how calm and controlled it seemed to be. So hopefully he does well. He seems like a nice kid and a great opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. But guys, before we let you go, we should mention briefly the Japanese Grand Prix this upcoming weekend. Bernie, you're already in situ in Japan. I'm just looking at last year's results. So Max was the winner. It was Red Bull 1-2, in fact. Max 1, Perez 2, Charles Leclerc 3rd, just ahead of Ocon in 4th, and Hamilton in 5th. What sort of things can we look out for this track, Bernie? Like, what do you expect, generally speaking, at Suzuka?
Well, it's a very different track to Singapore. To start with that, so it's really high downforce. You've got the S's at the start of the lap, which are really important. Only figure of 8, I guess, is important to say. So it's always good fun. But it's looking like a really dry and sunny weekend this weekend, which is unusual for Suzuka. We have had rain today, but the big thing with that is what you often see, which is expected again this weekend, is between the Friday, Saturday to Sunday, a big change in wind. So you go from a headwind through those S's to a tailwind through those S's, which really changes the balance of the car. And it's whoever's on top of that, well, I think will do well this weekend. Multiple stop race is generally exciting. So yeah, I'd be surprised if Red Bull aren't back in it. And then it's going to be interesting, like we say, to see how the upgrades that others have brought, the McLaren, the Ferrari, where that pace order sells out. But very, very different to what we had last weekend in Singapore, apart from the heat.
Everything Bernie said.
I like that punditry. Yeah, I was nodding and smiling there, going, yeah, this sounds good. This sounds good.
This is what I love though about watching, like, before the race, like, and all this. Like, I loved it. Like, I wouldn't even think of things like that, only that it's said to me and it's explained. And I don't know. Yeah, again, not to go back. I don't want to sound like a bloody Sky ambassador here saying this, but like, I love the way like these things are explained to you, and like I find every race, even just like the race just gone by, learning like about what Carlos did with the DRS. I didn't even get when he said, "I did it on purpose." You know, I was like, "What's he talking about?" I was like, you know, I thought it was like a joke or something, and then you learn, you're like, oh no. But yeah, that's what makes it so interesting. And that, like, obviously, given last week what happened with Red Bull and their car wasn't totally suited to that track, like, it looks like it should be suited to this one, so they'll probably just get back right on track. Who knows? But hopefully Max doesn't lose the plot.
Yeah, the usual. Yeah, he seems to have calmed down a little bit from when you first did the skit, I think.
When I actually, he did this, he was actually like, it looked like he was fine. It's like, I was laughing, I was watching the TV, I seen him jump out of the car, and it was like he jumped out of the car and you could see nearly there was no eye contact made with him. All the Red Bull engineers were all like this way, and he was just storming through the thing, and I was like, oh my god, he's so like peed off or whatever. And so then I just got that idea for a sketch. I had a gig in Kerry, so I couldn't do it straight away. It would have been better if I just hopped on it right away, but I did it the next morning. And the amount of people that came in criticizing me then, going, Max was totally chill about it. Like, what are you talking about? This isn't even funny. He didn't do this at all. I was like, well, you know, it's not real. I was like,
yeah. If there's one set of fans you don't want to piss off, it's the Supermax fans, I think, for sure. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you both. Conor, I think the next time we have you on, you're going to have to do A, Bernie Collins impersonation, and B, maybe 5 minutes or so in Spanish, and we'll get the subtitles.
Espanol. All right. So when's the next? So I'll come on around 2026.
2026, yeah. If you're ready by then.
You mentioned rights.
My Bernie will be ready a lot quicker than the Spanish will, I can tell you.
I'm looking forward to that one. Guys, it's been absolutely brilliant. Bernie Collins and Conor Moore, thanks both for hopping on the show today.
Thanks a million
you.
for having me, Shane.
Great
Pleasure.
stuff. We'll be back with the F1 pod on Off the Ball very soon. Thanks a million for tuning in.
The F1 Pod on Off the Ball with Chicago Town Pizza. Formula One? Yeah, we go to town on it.